Hello everyone. I've already made some videos in the past about narcissism and about narcissistic relationships and toxic relationships. Now this time I've received 2 comments from viewers. I blurred their name just to protect their privacy, and I also received an email from Susan who allowed me to use her first name, and it's about how to deal with a narcissistic parent and how can a daughter survive a relationship with a narcissistic mother. It's a long message. I won't be able to read all of it now, but if you're one of those daughters who are really suffering from this kind of phenomena with a narcissistic mother, I really recommend that you pause the video and take the time for a moment to read the whole message, just to see and to realize that you're not alone, that you are part of a wider social phenomena that is disadvantaging specific kind of people with unique abilities of emotional intelligence. Do you have any specific suggestions on how to endure and when an immature parent begins to insult us or try to make us uncomfortable and guilty in any possible way in response to our change and boundary setting? I'm an only child and I feel drained by this daily struggle with a mother who always clinged on me as if I was her mother. Thank you, Susan, for the message and for the trust. I'd like us first of all to notice 2 factors that create this experience. The first is the evolution of the generations, and second is the social definitions. Now, before I speak about the daughter-mother codependent relationship, I need to speak first of all about the child-parent relationship in the context of generations and social progress. If you look at the generation that was born 1 generation after the Second World War, those who were born roughly between 1954 and 1964, they were also called the baby boomers generation. This generation didn't experience the war, but they did benefit the most from the most financially thriving era that followed the war. Therefore, they could afford living a happy lifestyle away from any responsibility towards their societies or towards their families. Because in those days, thanks to the financial wealth and to the comfortable lifestyle, they could afford patronizing the previous generation, distancing themselves from them, yet get paid by them and talk about individualistic freedom. And they created those concepts of individualism and self, of course, to distance themselves from any social commitment. They could afford trending smoking, drugs, and listening to John Lennon without being homeless, and therefore enjoyed fully the youth in the 70s. Now, though I'll be speaking about this generation and about other generations, but it's important to remember that time is only an interpretation of a physical phenomenon. So what we need to focus on is the mindset of society and the individual in general. So from now on, we need to stop thinking about the baby boomers as a generation, but also as a mindset that can cross time and space when the relevant factors stimulate the cause. And if you bear with me, I'll explain everything. So now we are in the end of 2017. I know a couple of 60 years old baby boomers who are psychologists and academics with doctor degrees who are still receiving monthly bank transfers from their 80 years old mothers while demanding from their children to pay some of the rent and some of the bills. The baby boomers' illusion couldn't make them stay forever young physically, but it kept them and they kept their emotional and mental state dependent and needy until today. Therefore, some of them see in anyone a potential emotional and even financial provider. And when they turned to be older and weaker, this was the time to change the philosophy of individualism and break all family and all rules in the name of individualism and in the name of individualistic freedoms, to change that to becoming more control freaks towards their children, to adopt false family values that serve only their interest, but only after they enjoyed every aspect of their lack of family values. They had a wealthy and comfortable lifestyle without working on it themselves. Neither they had to express gratitude or appreciation for it. And they were not aware of all that. So they thought that this wealth and comfort is because they were genius. and that made them also grow a sense of entitlement that has not much to do with their actual capabilities and competence. Their narcissism is the result of too much privileges and entitlement without having what it takes to deserve it. The Second World War is just an example, but if you look at any social or personal movement that follows suffering, the one who suffered would grow empathy and gratitude. But the one who only benefited from suffering without experiencing it themselves, that would grow sense of entitlement and incompetence, of course, regardless if it's a baby boomer or something else. We can see similar traits with the generation who were born into the age of social media and social comfort from the late 80s. This lifestyle taught that we could get whatever we want instantly. Some of us never experienced wars or starvations, but they have the money to buy video games where they could shoot people and feel thrilled out of it. And if a police asked them to evacuate a street because of a potential danger, first of all, they'd pull their selfies and smartphones to make a tragic monologue about their suffering from the potential existential threat as if they were living in a Hollywood film, just to receive some likes and to tell their friends that they had actually a significant existential experience. After all, their lifestyle is empty of significance, thanks to the absence of challenges. And just like the baby boomers, those are not suffering. They are benefiting from suffering. So the baby boomers needed to survive their self-sabotage mechanism. That's why they needed someone to clean the mess for them. So they designed their children to do the job, especially those who were born until roughly 1985. Those years were the shift between the mechanic and the high technology and digital age. This generation was programmed by the baby boomers' parents to clean their mess, to fix their mistakes, to worship and admire them for each average success, and to be held guilty and responsible for any of their parents' failure. I even know some parents who blame their children because they couldn't pursue their careers, or because the mothers became housewives. A helpless child is to be blamed for the parents' choices and actions. And many of those children still carry their guilt and shame into their adult lives, trying to fix their mistakes, apologizing for destroying their parents' lives by coming to the world. What a rude baby. She doesn't understand that mama has a career to pursue and that daddy needs to have other sexual experiences before engaging in a long-term relationship with her mom. What a rude baby. Baby boomers mindset. Some parents would even use terms like, I was taking care of you when you were a child, as if they were doing the child a favor. When you, Susan, say immature parent, this description is to describe the baby boomers' mindset. Physically, they are 60 years old today. That's why they're being taken seriously. But mentally, they are still looking for a provider to finance their demanding lifestyle, while not taking any responsibility. Look at our politicians. Look at those who hold key positions in our societies. And this phenomenon was unfortunately also supported by the second factor, which is the new social definitions of the late 70s and early 80s that were also determined by the baby boomers themselves to shape a new public opinion that serve their new age. A public opinion that can tolerate their exploitive character and wrap their abusive actions with spirituality that demands unconditional compassion from their victims, reframing that as morality. After all, they are the judges and the politicians and the bankers and the psychologists. So they created the new concept of guilt in case one dares to question parents' intentions, as if our parents are divine angels who have no selfish motives, who have no predatory or abusive tendencies, who have no sexual desires or emotional needs. And this belief system was planted in all books and films and on TV. In the last 35 years, you might not find one source from the past 35 years that questions the character of the mother. And they designed you that way that if you dare to complain about your painful or abusive experience under your parents' rule, you should be ashamed of yourself. They had to program you that way in order to survive their shame of themselves. So even your friends from your generation, if they are still programmed and wired to the system, they would also police you if you dare to mention the word mother in any negative context. I'm far from saying that mothers are bad, but what I'm saying is that definitely there are abusive mothers and abusive fathers. And all time the baby boomers are in control of the system, you'll never hear this as a public official statement. So we better stop waiting or expecting for the official statement and begin to take actions in our personal lives. The system wants you to be the slave, and on the other hand, wants you to feel that you are the perpetrator, while the perpetrator is wearing the mask of the harmless and the victim, acting as the judge and the executor. And in this system, do you really expect that anyone would make you justice? I'm not a religious person, but for the conservative viewers, even Jesus didn't acknowledge Mary to be his mother. While Jesus was still talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside wanting to speak to him. Someone told him, "Your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you." He replied, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and brothers." How did this slip in the mind of the conservatives and the religious, moral people? They are programmed by the social interest. Though Jesus himself was documented by the religious establishment declaring his divine truth, yet narcissistic mothers can abuse as much as they want, and no one would be daring to question their intentions. The most dangerous narcissists and the most dangerous psychopaths are the ones that are wearing the mask of the harmless or the victim. And when society is so easily fooled by the shape, then the most dangerous narcissists would be the less suspected. And unfortunately, not only societies are still not ready for this, but also our academies, the legal systems, conventional psychology, and many trendy psychological movements and spiritual movements. They wouldn't even dare to speak about this or to open this Pandora's box. And if I speak now specifically about the mother-daughter issue, this would be also another Pandora's box to open. Beginning from the codependent relationship that begins from the nursing days, where the narcissistic mother either stretches this period as long as she can, after becoming addicted to the emotional thrill that gives her a sense of significance and meaning, or she wants to get rid as soon as possible from nursing that child because she doesn't have the love to give with that milk. But if we look at the mindset behind the act of nursing, it's a lifetime relationship. Sometimes the mother wants her daughter or a son to be close to her body and heart because of the emotional bias, and sometimes she wants, let's say, another daughter to be as far as possible, just in case if, of course, that daughter reflects an ugly truth to the mother. She sees her. In your case, Susan, you're an only child, as you informed. And in any case, I would still need a lot of information to be able to help you with that, because things can be a little bit more complex, and sometimes a child may be raised as the privileged child that can turn into a scapegoat later. Of course, depending on the mood of the narcissist, or on the hormones, or the mindset, or maybe the child awakens and decides to go her own way. So things can be dynamic here and more complex. But in general, we need to remember that since the narcissist is a corrupt system that bases its decisions on whims and on distorted perception as a result of the clumsy, opportunistic nature, this corrupt system will always lead to self-destruction. And the only thing that can prevent or delay that self-sabotage is a slave dedicates his entire life or her entire life to clean the mess and feed the bottomless bucket. That slave or scapegoat child is to be held guilty for any mistake that the mother or her privileged child do. The slave has to worship and follow the masters and never question them or point at the naked emperor. Although the scapegoat might be the most creative member in the family, and the real savior, and the real mind leader of the family that can lead the whole family into harmony and prosperity, but the narcissistic parent would never allow that to happen. The narcissistic parent would rather make the whole ship sink, but not to allow the scapegoat to be the captain. They can allow the spoiled child destroy the ship, but not to put the scapegoat on the wheel. Now, if you refuse to be that slave doing the senseless work that leads nowhere but your mental and physical pain, and if you refuse to sail with that crazy captain that is going to destroy the ship and put everyone in danger, if you refuse to be that slave, society would police you. Family would demonize you. Friends would judge you using the same guilt and shame that was planted in you since the beginning and in them also. And if the daughter of the narcissistic mother projects more femininity or beauty or class or intelligence or creativity or empathy than the mother, that could drive the narcissistic mother crazy. So she would be dedicating her life for blocking the daughter from thriving or finding again her true self. I spoke about true self in the previous video. If you like to play guitar, the narcissistic mother would bring you an amazing present for Christmas. Painting colors. They have nothing to do with the guitar. And you wouldn't even dare to complain about it because after all, she brought you a present for Christmas. But inside you and her, only you both know that she did it intentionally. Though both products might cost the same. If you wish to learn painting, she'd hire a piano teacher to give you piano lessons. If you wish for piano lessons, she'd send you to an acting workshop. Because it's never about what your true self wants. It's only about what she wants. And as a baby boomer, she's not raising you. She's competing with you. And the more you decide to follow the path that you were born to follow, she will do everything she can to stop you. Whether it's intimidation, or complaining to your friends, or even coming to your working environment, to your working place to embarrass you in front of your colleagues, or even drinking coffee with your ex-boyfriend. She'll make her best to recruit as much social pressure against you to bring you back where she wants you to be, not where you want to be. All this creates a situation where whatever you do, you lose. Of course, each case has its own uniqueness and it has its own small details, but I speak in general now. What we need to do is, first of all, to know your true self. I spoke about this in the previous video and I defined it. Know yourself before you've learned to experience emotionally the concepts of guilt and the concepts of shame. Guilt and shame don't exist. They are your remote control. I'm not saying that you need to commit crimes. What I'm saying is that you need to be able to know the difference between feeling guilty and being guilty, feeling ashamed and being shameful. Some very shameful people don't feel ashamed of themselves, including narcissistic mothers and politicians and artists with destructive agendas. So you need to know that though you or your mother refuse to acknowledge that, but your mother is an adult person. She is responsible for her choices and actions, not you. You're responsible for your choices and actions, not hers. And your choices and actions will lead you to your happiness or misery. And if she lives in happiness or misery, that's only the result of her choices and actions, not yours. Stop all beliefs that say that you are to blame for any of anybody else's misery. Actually, you could be giving yourself too much credit if you think that you have any ability or that if you are in a position to be responsible for her life or for anybody's life on this planet. Now, after making peace with yourself and setting yourself free from all responsibilities that are not yours and from all guilt that has nothing to do with you, here we need to know how to deal with society. Though many of our friends and family members are ignorant and have no idea what's going on in this context, and although they themselves have serious problems in their lives, but that doesn't prevent them from believing that they are in position to judge you or to tell you what you should do to fix your problems. Mostly those people have an interest, either direct or indirect, either with conscious hidden agenda or even with good intentions. I don't care what their motives are. If you want to heal yourself, first of all, I recommend that you get out of the toxic environment and avoid any contact with any infected person, good infected people or bad infected people. In an environment of a disease, first of all, get out of there. You may find yourself lonely for a moment, but at least this is a good place to start your healing process. Surviving this relationship and winning can only happen if we define the term winning from outside the world of definitions of the narcissist. The narcissistic mother may think that she won if she has the full support of the society against you. For her, it's okay if you live frustrated, humiliated, desperate, dependent, even sick. What is important is that she has free access to her supply, which is you. You must be stronger than any social intimidation and you will win. In addition to all that, there's the aspect of the sexual tendency. If you would have been a lesbian daughter of a straight mother, or a straight daughter or of a lesbian mother, or a transgender daughter, etc., that may also influence your experience. If you're both straight, the conflict might also get into other domains of the human psyche when the narcissistic mother competes with her helpless baby daughter for who is the more dominant female, forcing the daughter to act as her maid. If a man would have done that, that would immediately enter the domain of sexual harassment. But many gender bullies, especially from the feminist side of the spectrum, who wanted to have free access to the abuse of weaker females, distracted from this kind of violation. And since society is not aware of that yet, there's no one out there to lobby that. There's no one there who dares to talk about it in the media, and in general, no academic research would be funded to research this domain, and the domain of baby boomers in general, the abuse of the baby boomers in general. So, a daughter of a narcissistic mother may experience sexual abuse, despite the absence of physical contact. She would live in that painful experience for tens of years, but would never dare to point it out because the academies have not named it yet. They didn't call this phenomenon with any names. And the legal system has not acknowledged it yet. And the social system has no interest to open this Pandora's box in the first place. Not in the age of the baby boomers. This denial might be the peak of the pain of so many daughters of narcissistic mothers. But even in a much less extreme situation, the codependent relationship is enough to corrupt both sides. The longer the scapegoat endures, the later the narcissist would lose. So to win this, we must break that spell of conditional love, where a narcissistic mother conditions love with fulfilling her expectations. And we need to accept that she is an individual who exists regardless of our existence. And if she chooses to live in misery and in pain, I love her so unconditionally that I would allow her to live that experience that she chooses and the results of her choices. That's how unconditional my love is. No one owns no one. The age of psychological slavery must end. Most societies might not be ready for that yet, but each one can begin to benefit from this knowledge on one's own life. And let society take as much time as it's needed to awaken. The journey is personal because the person is the one to pay the emotional and mental price. So first of all, abandon the sick environment. Second, don't give anyone who is still infected with that disease, don't give him access to you. Then you'll be ready to heal, and after that, after healing, you'll be ready to thrive. I hope I could shed some light on this. I'm Trady Jabarin. Thank you so much for watching.